Okay, well, welcome to today's Linked to the Land presentation from Mississippi Valley Conservancy. My name is Sarah Bratnober, and I manage communications and outreach for the Conservancy. And I'm joined today by Carol Abramson. She's our executive director. Carol is also a gardener and a farmer, so she will likely be able to help with answers to your gardening questions also. Our special guest is Karen Stoltz. Karen serves as the Ecospirituality Project Outreach Coordinator for the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration. And if you've ever visited the Franciscan Sisters greenhouse or their gardens and orchard, you know that Karen has a fantastic place for growing food. But when I asked her if she would share some of her expertise with us today, I told her that most of us don't have big, beautiful greenhouses to work with. So we hope you'll advise us with those of us who simply have a sunny window and some packets of seeds. And she said yes. So here is Karen with her presentation, Starting Your Garden Indoors. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I'm very happy to be with everybody today. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. So like Sarah said, I am the Ecospirituality Project Outreach Coordinator for the Franciscan Sisters Perpetual Adoration, and I'm really excited to be sharing a little bit about starting your garden indoors with you today. Next slide. So for my presentation today, I anticipate about 30 minutes for the presentation itself and then 15 minutes for questions if need be at the end. I also wanted to just share a little note in the beginning that to make everything directly applicable to our lives up here in La Crosse, I actually am using products in here from actual local businesses and a few online to give real life examples of like what I would purchase, or what might be a fun option for you. So maybe there might be better options closer to home if you're zooming from another location. So that's just a quick note for everybody here. So why do you want to start your seeds ahead? So to begin with, a lot of times, especially with the earlier seeds, we're starting them in, say, like February for the really early ones. And it's probably going to be snowy outside and quite chilly. And so it offers a little bit of green in these cold conditions here, especially in Wisconsin. So you also can share this experience with family and friends. We're very happy that we've got a granddaughter on the Zoom today. So this is a perfect representation right here, because learning from your mom, learning from your grandma, grandpa, it makes it so much more enriching. And there's so many great memories that you can share. And also you can spark interest to learn these life skills. So this life skill of like growing, and then also getting the joy of watching things grow and knowing that you had a good part in that, and learning about the generosity of nature when you go to harvest. And also it's just a joy to work together on a project and see results. And so, yeah, it's just a great opportunity. So by growing your plants indoors, you also can expand what you'd be able to grow. Some plants need over 100 days in order to produce, like fruit. Then it's good to start those types indoors, especially. It offers more flexibility over exactly what type of plant you want to grow. So for example, a lot of heirloom plants, they'll need longer growing seasons. So for example, I've got an organic homestead tomato that we might have saved from seed from someone, and we want to grow that specific type in our garden. Starting your plants indoors offers you that opportunity. You get to play in the soilless medium outside of the typical growing season, actually getting your hands in the in the soil, and what you're buying is actually soilless medium, typically when you're buying it from the store. Usually there's a base of sphagnum peat moss or coconut coir, but you get that tactile experience, and it's so enriching, I think. You also have the chance to give away extra plants. A lot of times when we start our seedlings, we end up with a whole bunch of extras because you don't expect them all to germinate and all to transplant out well, but sometimes they all do. Last year I had so many extra tomatoes. I couldn't find enough homes for them. It was very joyful to be able to offer them to as many people as would accept them. So that it's just, I don't know, there's so much generosity in plants, and it's just so fun. But like I said, the joy of accomplishment, and also you save money. So if you would have bought all of these as transplants, from the store, it'd be a lot more expensive. So by starting them yourself, you're saving yourself a lot of money, which is really nice. So to begin with, what do you need? So here is just a listing of essentials in my estimation. So you're going to need seeds. So figure out what you want to grow. Do you want flowers? Do you want produce? What do you want to grow? Next, you'll need windows that are facing south. East and west also work, but you'll also want to supplement with a growing light. If you have a northern window, if all of your windows are just facing north, you definitely want a grow light or multiple grow lights. Also, obviously, if you are inside, like right now, I'm just giving you an example of, say you don't have, a space with a lot of windows. Behind me, you see a bright pink light. Maybe I should flip it off. Maybe you can see it. And this is an example of a setup for a growing station right there, where you just, you can just put it against a wall and just turn the light on. It, I guess, is less eco-friendly. You definitely don't want to do that. If possible, stick it by a window and supplement with light there. But if you absolutely must, you can put growing lights, but you'll need to put them. See if you can get a window. This is the very last case scenario. I really, yeah, definitely use a window if at all possible. But worst case scenario, you can do microgreens with a grow light, and that would supplement in a room without windows. So you do want to have each of your plants receive 14 to 16 hours of light each day. So that is a lot of hours, but that is what they need in order to grow strong. Otherwise, they'll get it's called leggy. They'll get really, really spindly and really, really tall. And they're essentially, their cells are growing they're stretching their cells, and they're going to be really weak as a result. What you want is lots of good light for your plants, and then they can grow nice and more robust. So they won't get as tall, but they'll be healthier. So you also need a growing medium. So a seed starter is what you want to begin with. It'll actually say it right on the bag, or like a starting medium. And then you'll want to transplant out to a potting mix if you can. So the next one is a potting mix. And the seed starter is basically more lightweight. It allows those little roots to get through the growing medium easier, and it drains really well. The potting mix is a little more, you'll notice that there are larger like sticks in there, and you'll notice that it's got more to it. Sometimes your starter mix might not have any nutrients in it at all, but because your seedlings are using their initial food from their seeds, but then you do want to get them into a potting mix when you transplant them for sure. Next one is trays with inset cells. And a clear cover. The clear cover is called a humidity dome, yeah. So the next one is small pots for your initial transplanting, and trays to hold those small pots. And then also plant labels, because you obviously want to make sure what you're planting, what you've planted, because if you're like me, you walk back to it and you've planted a whole bunch, you need to have those labels in order to know what you've planted because you've forgotten. And so that's very important. In addition, you can purchase mycorrhizal fungi powder, and that encourages root promotion and or it encourages root growth. And hydrogel crystals, those are, they feel like plastic, but then you stick them in water and they'll hydrate, and that actually offers some root retention and or water retention, which when you transplant them, it doesn't shock the roots as much, which is really nice. And then also you want some sort of shelving unit if you can, if you don't have enough flat spaces in your home, if you don't have enough countertop space. I like to use a shelving unit because then also, if something runs over, you have that instead of on a table getting everything else destroyed. So that's nice. And then I also added zip ties because like the unit behind me, if you buy those lights that are, that don't have a stand, you want to be able to attach them to something. And so I use zip ties to attach them right underneath each of the wire racks. And then a starter and transplanting granular plant food is optional if you want to give them additional nutrients. Don't worry, it does come in organic as well. So it doesn't need to be conventional all the way. If you want to, great. If you want to go organic, either way, there are options. Also, heating mats are really nice. We mentioned those a little bit earlier in the conversation, and those are really nice, especially if you're growing in, a location, say like, if it's a little cooler than your plants would like. So your plants want to be growing, your seedlings want to start at like 70 to 80, maybe, 85 is the high end. You don't want it any higher than that, but 70 to 80 is what we're looking for. 65 to 80, anywhere in there is good for germination for your seeds. And so sometimes you'll want to, it's a little warmer, then you might want to keep your house. If you're being a little more eco-friendly, it's good to have that heating mat. And it also kind of kicks your seedlings into germinating into high gear. So also a raised bed kit or supplies if you're interested in doing a raised bed for that. So when should you start? For zones 3 and 4, we're in zone 4. Right now is the perfect time to be starting most of your seedlings. So if like mid-March right now is the time to start them. If you were doing onions though from seed, or if you were starting some other like celery or petunias, you're a little late on those. So we do want to start mid-March, usually 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date, which is usually right around Mother's Day in May. We want to make sure that, before May 10th-ish, we want to make sure that we have, we count back 6 to 8 weeks, and that's when we want to start most of our seeds. That's the majority of them. So right now is the time to be starting most of your seeds. Check your seed packets. That will tell you when to start ahead. You can also do some researching online. But yeah, like I said, some of them, we're a little late on the early ones already. So yeah, 60 to 80 degrees is what we're looking at for starting your seeds. You can also find planting schedules online, which is really nice. And so I'm just going to show you an example. If you want to just look this up to see, look at what you wanted to plant, and you can kind of go down your list. This comes from the extension. And you can see, the first line is, starting your seeds indoors. It tells you when you want to, if it's a crop that you want to. You'll notice that you don't see some of them right here because you'll start those right out in the garden. And then, it also shows then when to start them outdoors, and then it gives you some additional information as well. So just know that you can check that out online, and that's a good opportunity to help you out. It's a good supplement. So don't start too early. Sometimes I want to start my tomatoes too early. You're wintered out and you want to start thinking about spring. So sometimes you want to start your seedlings a little early, but I would encourage you to just, have a little patience and hold off, because otherwise you might end up with really, really tall tomatoes that you're going to have to plant super deep and aren't going to do quite as well. So they do a lot better if they're not so large when they transplant out typically. So also in professional greenhouses, they actually regulate some of their seedlings even with chemicals if they are started out too early. So, don't be in that category. Make sure you are patient. Patience is a virtue. Start your seeds out when it says on the packet. You'll do yourself a huge favor. So what steps are involved between starting my seeds and putting them in the ground? So determine, number one, what to grow. The next one is purchase those seeds. Next one is planting the seeds, then transplanting the seeds into larger pots. That is optional if you've already started them in a pot that they won't outgrow. Then obviously you don't need to transplant them out. And then you'll, by transplanting them out though, into larger pots, then you'll allow for better root growth. If they've outgrown the little teeny tiny cells, if you've started them in those little cells, and then also you'll get that nutrition from the potting mix instead of just the seed starter. And so there's some serious perks to transplanting them. So then also hardening off your seeds is the next step, and then also transplanting your seeds into that garden soil or your pots if you want to grow them on, say, like a patio or a raised bed of some sort. So determining what to grow. This is fun. This is what we should be thinking about early spring. Even late winter is good. By January, that's a good time, but definitely by now, this is a great time to have that conversation and figure out, what do you like to eat? What do you like to see? Like what kind of produce are you looking for? What kind of flowers are you looking for? Do you want to grow some pollinator habitat? What are you looking for? What are you looking for in production? Are you looking for maybe heirloom varieties? Are you looking for a lot? Are something that's going to produce a lot? Or are you looking for something that's going to be very specialized? How much space do you actually have to grow things? It'll say on your packet how much space your plants need. Containers versus in the ground, what do you have available? Where I live right now, I live in an apartment, and I have like a 4-foot patio outside. So I don't have a ton of space. So I'm going to want a raised garden, something, maybe like a trough or something out there, something that's off the ground, something that's not adhered directly to the ground for mine. Or maybe I want to grow it in pots instead of, actually growing in the soil. I'll be looking for containers. And so I'll be looking for options that say like bush bean, bush cucumbers, determinate tomatoes. These are plants that grow bushier instead of taller. So they're not indeterminate. That's what you're looking to avoid. You're looking to avoid things that keep growing taller. You're looking for things that are going to want to bush out. That's what we want. So then if you're growing directly in the ground later on, then you also can offer yourself those indeterminate options. And also another thing to consider is disease resistance. Have you had issues with diseases in the past? Check for varieties that are specifically resistant to those diseases if you can. That's very helpful. Also, making sure that, if you're growing things in the ground, making sure that you're moving your plants to different locations in the garden, if you can. Then the next thing is to consider, are you a beginning gardener? Are you just starting? Are you just getting your hands wet into this? This is exciting. You're going to want to check out things like maybe spinach, lettuce, radish, zucchini, cherry tomatoes, pumpkin, squash, sunflowers. Some locations I noticed that it's specific, like they have specific areas in the seeds, and it gives you suggested specific types of plants that are very easy to grow. It'll say right above it, easy to grow. I saw it in Walmart just the other day. And so, that's a nice cue for if you're just starting. And also master gardener, if you're a master gardener, you can start growing things like Lisianthus, which is prairie mallow. I have not been successful with that yet. And if someone has been, I'm very impressed with you. We're all somewhere along, in the spectrum. And that is my next challenge for myself. So that's one that's a little more challenging. So you're able to do all those easier ones plus really challenging ones. Another thing to do is to consider herbs. There are so many easy ones to grow, and they're so easy to grow. They're fast. They grow really quickly, and you can use them in so many applications. They smell good. They taste good. It's just a delightful option. You can add it to so many different things, and you can trim them down so often, and then they'll just grow right back. And so they're a very generous plant. I would definitely recommend considering herbs as an option in your garden. Next one is purchasing your seeds. So when you're purchasing your seed, determine, do you want to buy the seed packet? Are you looking for only a few? Or are you going to be really a go-getter and start a big garden? So in that case, you might want to consider bulk. Bulk is going to be cheaper and, or I should say more affordable. And, it's just, I don't know, there's something very satisfying about buying a big bag of seeds. So that might be a good option for you. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of options up here for bulk that I've been able to find, but there are a few. I've heard that Ace Hardware has bulk, but I haven't seen it quite yet. But I do see like some food co-ops do have that. So conventional or organic, what's important to you? Make that decision for yourself. Where are you buying them from? Choose a trusted source, because if you're receiving seeds, maybe from someone, just make sure it's a reputable source, because sometimes there are diseases that will travel via the seed. And so just try to avoid that, just make sure you have a reputable source. Also purchase or you can do a seed swap through seed exchanges. I know that our library used to have a seed exchange. I haven't been able to find another one in our area, but if anybody knows of one, let me know, because otherwise we might be interested in starting a seed exchange maybe later after this growing season through the FSPA. So I would be interested in seeing if there is, number one, interest in that. So put it in the chat if you don't mind. If you have interest, or if you know of a seed swap in our area, because otherwise it might be neat to bring that back. Next one, germination is less every year for the seeds that are stored. Some seeds will decline faster than others. So for example, onion seeds, I will only use them from the previous growing season. I won't use old onion seeds from multiple years. However, I'll use bean seeds, from multiple years ago. But you can assume that the first year, your germination in general, I should say, will go down to 80% germination, after for the next year. And so at least down to 80%. So like I said, though, it really depends on your type of seed that you're working with. Okay, so planting your seeds. Make sure, number one, the best thing you can do for yourself is to read that seed packet. And then what you'll need to do for planting your seeds is you will fill the plastic seed cells 3/4 with the damp starter seed mix. So like if you imagine like a towel that you've wrung out, that's what you're looking for. You don't want it super wet. You don't want it dry. You want it to feel like a damp towel. So then you'll cover it with growing medium and or vermiculite for some plants that need a little light to germinate, and then assume the regular covering if not specified otherwise. So your seed packet will tell you if your seeds need light to germinate. Most don't. So for most seeds, you'll be able to just go ahead and cover them with the growing medium. And when you cover it, you'll cover it to about 2 to 3 times the actual width of the seed. So that's the general depth of the top soil that you'd put, or the top growing medium that you'd put on top. And you'll water the tray with a sprinkler until the water drains out the bottom of the cells. Give it a good solid drink, and then label each plant variety so you don't need to worry about remembering. And then you'll cover with that clear covering, which is called the humidity dome, and turn on the heat mat if desired. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here, and we'll actually go through that process. I'm just going to show you how easy this actually is, because if I can do it, you can do it. So I'm going to stop this sharing right now, and hopefully you can see me. Okay. And so then I'm just going to go ahead and take my growing starting mix. Notice it does say starting mix here. And I've got my cells here in my tray. You can kind of see that. And then I'm going to go ahead and I use my hands to sprinkle it in. I make a big mess, but I am prepared to deal with that with a vacuum cleaner. And that's totally okay. But like I said, like I'm right here in an apartment, with carpeting. If I can do this, you can do this. This is just as easy as can be. Can you see the cells? There we go. I think this might be better. So I'm filling my cells about 3/4 of the way with this growing medium, the starting mix here. And you'll notice that it is really nice and light. And I'm just sprinkling it in here. And I'm just going to go rather quickly. It doesn't need to be perfect. If you've got them a little overfilled, just take a little bit out of the top. No worries. Make this a fun experience. There's a reason they call it horticulture therapy, right? It's just delightful working directly with the growing medium, with the cells. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll do about half of it, because I'm just going to do this as a demo. I'm not going to waste all of your time on each individual one. But say I want to do about half of a tray. Okay, so there we go. So you can kind of see they're not totally perfect, but they're about 3/4 of the way full. And we'll take our seeds here and we'll open it up. And what I usually do is I'll put about 2 to 3 seeds in each cell, because when you're growing seeds, you're going to go ahead and assume that they're not all going to germinate. They're probably not all going to, transplant out perfectly either. You'll probably lose a few in the process. And if they all germinate, all the better. You're just going to have a much more generous garden there, and maybe you'll have more to share with other people. So I do, like I said, about 2 to 3 seeds per cell here. And there we go. I'll do just a few more here. Oopsies. lose a few in the process. That's okay. Now we'll take our growing medium and then we'll go ahead and we'll sprinkle it right on top just to cover it. And you want about a quarter to a half an inch, once you've calculated out the size of the seed if you want, and and the covering, which should be about, like I said, 2 to 3 times the width of the seed. You just go ahead and cover it like this. And then we'll go ahead and use our super fancy watering can that we've had forever and give it a good solid drink until water comes out the bottom of our cells. And make sure, like I said, that you do have a tray. There should be a tray underneath to catch the water. Otherwise, you're going to have a mess on your hands. Usually when you buy these packets, with the tray, it'll usually have like a plastic, that humidity dome, and also the tray underneath that doesn't have any slats in the bottom. Like, it's a solid tray. And so the water won't go through it. So the water will go through your cells, your first layer there, but not through that following, not the black tray underneath. And so then you should have, let's set this on the side here for just a hot second here. Put this there and put that there. And you'll see that you'll have your tree underneath, and then you'll just go ahead and put your humidity dome right over the top of it, and that'll keep in the humidity for the plants. And then you'll notice that there will be condensation on it, and it might get a little foggy on it, through for the next few days. And that's what you want. Then it's damp enough. And then you can just go ahead and leave that humidity dome on at least until the seeds germinate. And then if you want to keep it on until they're little seedlings, that's great too. But remember that you will need to wean them off of that if you keep them as little seedlings. So I'll stop and go ahead and share my screen again. Great. So that's that process. And then you just set it on your sorry, there we go, on your rack and let that grow. And then you'll want to just make sure that you are checking for the humidity when you stick your finger in the growing medium. Check it for humidity, make sure that it feels damp, that it's not all the way dried out, and also make sure that it's in a warm enough location. You don't want to get, you want to make sure that the temperature is regulated. You don't want it too warm, too cold. 70 to 80 is great. 65 to 80, that's a good temperature. So while you're doing that, now is the time to get outside. And if you can get in your ground, once it's warm enough, we're going to have some rain the next week. But after that's over, that's, say like early May, before that May 10th, you'll want to till your garden. You'll want to remove those spent brown plants, anything from the last growing season, because we don't want to be introducing, we want to minimize our chance of disease. We want to minimize our chance of any of that, weeds, all of that. So pull your weeds that you have popping up, and also mulch your walkways. We lay down cardboard and we put straw on top for ours. You do you, whatever works best for you. Some people grow like a low clover or something in their walkways. There are a lot of different options. I find I'm a little concerned about that being invasive, but each of their own. and then purchase the supplies that you'll need for moving ahead. So if you're going to use a raised bed, now's the time to purchase that and get that assembled before your last frost date. Between now and then is the time to be doing that. So once those seeds do germinate, once they pop up, as they say, out of the soil, then you'll go ahead and remove the plastic humidity dome a little bit at a time. I would do maybe half a day, just because you don't want to shock those little seedlings. And then make sure you continue to water your trays well. Make sure, I like to water it like at the base once you've started your seedlings, once they start popping up, I water it right on, in the black tray at the bottom, because it encourages the roots to go all the way to the bottom of the cells instead of very light watering. If you water just a little bit, the roots will tend to want to stay towards the top. But if you water at the base, it'll bring the roots right to the bottom. So do water well, and let it dry out between waterings, in the tray at the bottom. And just until it dries out. You don't want to leave it, let the soil get dry, but let that tray dry out between, because that'll prevent your fungal diseases and also damping off, which that is a type of fungal disease where you're like, if you see your seedlings and then all of a sudden right at the base of them they turn brown and then they flip over, that's called damping off, and that's usually too much humidity, which encourages that fungal disease. Also, make sure that you clean your trays in between using them, clean your cells between using them. And that also, by letting it dry out, it also minimizes fungal gnats and whiteflies. If you do get those and they're kind of inevitable in greenhouses, it almost seems like you almost always end up with at least a few fungal gnats or whiteflies. I usually just use like fly paper. That's all you need, and that'll catch them and keep them under control typically. But that tells you that maybe your soil's just a little damp. Maybe you can dry it. Maybe you can watch that a little bit more. So make sure you're using your grow light as your seedlings are growing. In between the seeds are, as they're getting up to about maybe an inch tall. So make sure that your growing light itself is at least 6 inches from your seedlings, because you don't want to burn them. But you don't want to have them too much more than, say, like a foot above them, because then they might not be getting as strong of light as they would prefer. So do make sure that they continue to have those 14 to 16 hours of light each day, and you can adjust accordingly. Adjust your growing light as they grow taller. So a lot of times they'll have like chains or something like that, your growing light, or you can do that yourself. Do adjust your growing light to make sure that it's at least 6 inches above your little plants. Check your growing medium daily for water, pests, and diseases, as they're growing. When you go to transplant, then say that your seedlings are starting to show those roots. They're starting to come out the bottom of your tray. That's how I usually tell that they're ready to transplant. But other seed packets will say, like for tomatoes, that they should be at least like 2 inches tall. Maybe another thing to check, is that's another one. It'll say like actual heights as well. For me, I usually just check to see if the roots are coming out the bottom. And when you do transplant out, this is transplanting them from their tiny little cells to a larger pot. So you can see the larger pots in the picture there that I'm talking about. And so, like I said, once their seedlings start showing roots through the bottom of their cells, or you start seeing true leaves, which is the next set of leaves coming out from your plants. So for example, you'll see usually 1 or 2 leaves, depending on the type of plant. Those are the cotyledons. Those are not true leaves, you know, the first 1 or 2. But then the next ones will look a little different sometimes, or they'll be coming at it at another angle. And that also tells you that it's time to transplant your little seedlings into larger containers. This is when you're transplanting out, it is good for the root growth because it will then offer a lot more space for them. But assume every time you transplant that your seedlings are going to lose about 10% of their roots when they're transplanted out due to the shock. And so that's just how it goes. When you are, after when you're transplanting out, make sure you're adjusting those grow lights to make sure that they are to the height, of the new plant, 6 inches above at least. And do save your cells and your trays because then you'll be able to use them again next year, and that's one less expense for the following year. But do make sure, like I mentioned, that you clean them with soapy water and you sanitize them with, say, like it's a 10% bleach solution, something like that. So I think I'll give you a little video here. Let me check for sound. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and play this, and then Sarah, could you tell me if you can hear this sound when we play it? Hello from the FSPA greenhouse today.
I can hear it.
This is Karen Stoltz, and I am going to show you how to transplant some Brussels sprouts. So what we're going to need is a cup. We're just using a solo cup. And we also have our little baby seedlings. And you'll see that their roots are just starting to come out the bottom, which shows us that they're ready to get transplanted. We have a whole bunch of them, and let's go ahead and get started. So what we're gonna do is we'll take the solo cup, and we had poked holes in the bottom, so it allows for water to come in from the bottom. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill it with our growing medium about to the top ring there. You'll see that there's a ring in the solo cup, the very top ring there. So right there. And then what we're going to do is, I have a little clump here, so I'm just going to break it up. And then I'm going to take a little scoop that we have in here of some mycorrhizal powder that we've put into some water, and we've also put some hydrogel crystals in here. So what we're going to do is we'll take our scooper and we'll go ahead and put in some gel. I filled this can full of water with the mycorrhizal gel mixture, and I poured about just over half of it into the cup. And so then you can see the little crystals in there. And then what we're going to do is I used a little grapevine bit to soften up our little corner cell here. And so if you pop this through the bottom, oopsies, can't really see. If you pop it through the bottom, it'll loosen up your plants on the inside. And then I already have taken out a few of them. I'm going to snag our last little guy. Here it is. And I'm going to put it in the gel so its roots are inside the gel here to maintain its moisture, and then that the mycorrhizae will actually encourage it to stimulate more root growth. So we have it in there, and that'll the gel will maintain the moisture for it. So I'm just going to go ahead and move some of the growing medium around it to kind of stabilize it. And then I'm going to add just a little bit more growing medium to the top of it, just like this. and we'll stabilize the little seedling again so it's in the middle to maximize its growth potential. And then just a little bit more, and you want to make sure that you don't fill it all the way to the first leaf-like structures, which are called cotyledons, but you'll fill it to about, I don't know, 3/4 of the length of the stem. So that's how you plant it. And then we'll add some water to the bottom of our container here. After we have filled it all the way full with cups, we'll fill it maybe about 1/4 of the way full of water, so the little cups can soak up all of that water for the little seedlings to use to grow. And that's how you do it. So I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to my next.
We should probably try and wrap up in about 5 minutes, Karen, so that we have time for question and answer. And meanwhile, people can enter in questions in the chat window. There's a button at the bottom of the screen that says chat, and that allows you to put your questions in.
Great, thank you so much. Yes, I will wrap that up. Okay, so let me go back to sharing here. Thank you. Oops. Okay, so present. Okay, so sorry about that. So yeah, you'll just continue to let them grow then. And then for hardening off your seeds, essentially you want to just transition them out from their nice humid environment to a brighter environment with that's usually cooler with more wind. So essentially you're just going to slowly do that. So a lot of times you can get like a portable greenhouse, you know, just something, or you know, something that has like a zip up side, or you know, with a covering, or I think that there was a mention of maybe some you know, cut off milk jugs. That's always a great idea. And then also if you have like a 3 seasons room, that's also a wonderful option. So essentially you're taking your plants from this prime, really warm environment. And I would start with just a few hours a day, you know, crack open, you know, your, you know, bring them to the 3 seasons room for maybe a few hours at a time. Notice that, you know, like in a 3 seasons room, that there is a roof on that. You know, or, you know, if you're using like a portable greenhouse outside, go ahead and, you know, put it in there and then start cracking, you know, unzip it just a little bit at a time, because you're just trying to acclimate your seeds to a little cooler environment, a little brighter environment, but you don't want to stick them directly out in the sun, you know, the first day, because it'll bleach their leaves, they'll turn all white and they'll die. They also are used to high humidity inside. And so you want to also, you know, that's also why you want them kind of enclosed, and then gradually give them more hours a day, you know, out in, you know, or with a door opened, or, you know, windows opened, something that starts to allow wind, something that starts to allow, you know, more light. Get them in, and also the cooler temperatures, you know, start bringing them out. And then eventually you can put them maybe under a tree outside. And then eventually they'll be ready to go. You'll want to allow like 1 to 2 weeks to fully acclimate them. Don't push it, because otherwise they'll you know, they're more likely to die. So if you put them also, you know, you can put them in just like make like a little cold frame. If you want to just put some little hoops outside, you can definitely do that too. So when you transplant outside, you can just put, like, you can see the powder on the left, the mycorrhizal powder. I've got the hydrogel here, and then you put your plant in. This is an example of a tomato, and you plant right up until the first leaf there. And then you would want to actually remove the bottom leaf because you don't want to encourage disease. And then I just put a cage on the next one. So that's transplanting them back outside, and you can see how fun it is. Here's some peppers. Azura, one of our students this summer, did it. And then just when to plant outside. This gives you a map. So like I said, Mother's Day is usually a good time for us for most plants. But remember that there are some plants that are more tender, like tomatoes, peppers, sweet potatoes. Those also need to be maybe the last week of May or first week of June is a good time to do that. You'll notice that if you ever order sweet potato slips, they don't come until the last week of May. And there's a reason why. It's because they don't really want to be outside before then. So yeah. Like I mentioned, there are some plants that are easier to grow and some that are more challenging. So just maybe start with the easier ones. But if you're more like Carol, who is a professional and has done this for a long time, she has a lot more breadth for options there. And so there are some plants though that you don't want to start outside necessarily. A lot of plants with tap roots. A lot of root crops like carrots, beets, radish. The radish are more so that they're short season plants as well. So plants that are really short season, like lettuce and spinach, you could transplant outside, but they have such a short season. I mean, they grow so fast that if you want to maximize your space inside, you might as well just go ahead and go with some other plants. But definitely read the seed packets, they'll tell you. And I went into a lot of, purchasing, but I think that we might just kind of cruise past that. Just know that there are a lot of different types of options, if you want, of what type of seeds you want. So depending on what you want to purchase, even where you purchase them from, you'll notice that the cost is different. Yeah, and then also these are just some pricing of each of the types of products that you might consider for, like the grow lights and the growing medium. And I just gave examples of local places to purchase them from. And then additional things that you can add, or like a fancier things like the shelving and the heating mat and the gel crystals and the mycorrhizal, all of that stuff, and the portable greenhouse. Something to consider though is raised beds. And if you are looking to have like maybe you want to grow in pots, maybe for accessibility, maybe if you don't want to bend down so much, it might be good to consider a raised bed. And they come in all kinds of depths, which is really nice. So like for 1 foot, even little toddlers can play in these, which is nice. And then for 2 feet, this is more wheelchair accessible. 3 feet minimizes your bending. So those are all good to consider. And then I also added, there's so many different, materials they're made out of, so many different designs. Make sure though that your pot is, if you're growing in pots, make sure that they're deep, because you want to make sure that you can anchor your plants, especially if you're growing like a bigger plant, like a tomato or a pepper, something trellised. Needs to be a deep pot, much deeper than you'd expect. Even hay bales, or straw bales, excuse me. You don't want to grow hay bales because they have seeds in them, but straw bales might be a good option as well. That's very popular if you just look that up online. So yeah, I think so. Also, there's less weeds in container gardening because they're taller, and also usually you're using a new growing medium, which is nice too. There are also tools for better accessibility if someone has arthritis. That's something to consider. So we can all grow things. It's just the type. So microgreens and cuttings of geraniums are additional little fun bits. So Yeah, and if you do find bugs, know that there are a lot of control options. So, if you want to quarantine your plants and pick off those bugs and wipe the leaves or spray them with a horticultural soap, you can definitely do that. Take them outside as soon as possible, and then a lot of the natural predators will handle it. But then if it's really, really bad, you just got to pitch it because you don't want to make anything else have the deal with the disease. But I've got some other resources here, but that's it. Thank you so much for your time, and if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Sarah, you are muted.
Sorry about that.
Sarah, I think you're muted. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to once again encourage anyone to add questions or even unmute yourself if you'd like to just directly voice your question for Karen. We'll take a few more minutes for that before signing off.
Karen, there was a question earlier. Somebody is having trouble getting their Brussels sprouts to actually get heads on them.
Oh, that's a really interesting, cool one. And what you want to do is 3/4 of the way through the summer, you'll want to snip off the top about foot of your Brussels sprout plant. And then that'll put more energy into each of the individual Brussels sprouts. And then they won't be all really, really small. You'll have larger, though less of them, but then you'll end up with larger Brussels sprouts. Excellent question. And I actually just learned that this year. So that was an excellent, very timely question. Thank you.
Great. Can you stop sharing your screen, please?
Oh, sure. I apologize.
Then we can see everybody.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. And then there's a question about posting the reference sites. I think we could send those out in an email to everybody afterwards.
Sounds great.
So we'll pull that information together for you and send that out in an email. And there is another question about why should people consider to start an indoor garden?
No, with your change.
Okay, so yeah, starting your garden indoors is going to offer you a lot more, I guess, diversity of plants that you could grow. So if you've got plants that need a long season, so for example, a lot of like heritage, like a lot of heritage tomatoes or heirloom tomatoes, they need a longer growing season. And so by starting them indoors, that offers that more, that longer growing season. And so that's why you'd want to start them indoors. But also starting them indoors, it allows you to have, I don't know, I guess, extend the whole season for yourself, and you can enjoy some more greenery the whole year round. Or, well, I mean, a long 3/4 of the year instead of maybe about half of a year. And also, it offers you the opportunity to, I don't know, just, I don't know. I guess it's to share the season, I guess, with people during that time too. And by starting those seeds indoors and starting more seeds, you can share them with, you can give them away to more people too for their gardens. And also by starting your seeds, as opposed to purchasing actual like transplants, you're going to be saving yourself a lot of money as well.
Yeah, and I know for myself, Karen, I'm always just so anxious to get into the garden way before I can get into the garden. So, and yeah. I know you mentioned just getting your fingers dirty and in that soilless mix, and then seeing that go from a seed to an actual plant, and seeing it grow, and the fact that you did that, you nurtured that. Right. I just think it's a phenomenal experience, and it's so fun for kids. So. Yes. Get some kids involved. Marigold seeds are perfect for kids. They're large, they're easy for their little fingers to put them in the soil. They come up quickly, then they get a flower on them really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, for kids that don't have maybe a lot of, those fine motor skills, if you accidentally drop 10 seeds in one cell, you can still divide them when you transplant them. So yeah, it offers a lot of flexibility. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's a great addition. And you can compare with your friends too, other fellow gardeners. You can look at their seedlings and your seedlings. It's just fun.
There is a question about no-till gardening, which we're finding out the science shows that no-till is really the best for the microbes in the soil.
Yes.
But, I'll fully admit that I have to till once. I just have to, get that soil loosened up and kind of mixed up and ready for my seeds. And then after that, I don't till, but I know that that's not really the best. I don't know how you feel about that, Karen.
Yeah, I'm actually with you as well. I do need to till it up a bit to soften up to soften up the soil in the beginning too. I mean, we do cover crops and all of that. We need to till those under. We don't have super fancy machinery or anything like that. So yeah, I'll also just admit that I use a rototiller and I run through before we plant as well. Turn over the soil. Yep. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and if you don't till or you don't have a tiller, a broad fork is excellent for loosening that soil up and getting your bed ready. So it's something you can look into. It would certainly be far less expensive for somebody who's starting out. Just Google what a broad fork is, but it's just really a very large, wide fork, and it'll get under the soil and just kind of lift it up. And it's less disturbance than a rototiller, so it is a better way to go. Personally, I have a really large garden, so like Karen, I just would not have the time to use a broad fork. But if you're starting out small, that's a great way to start.
Yeah, and you actually bring up a really good point with like the broad fork and like with like a tine type thing. So if you have quackgrass, by using like something with tines like that, then you're actually getting the roots and stuff, and I want to say like the all those rhizomes across. And so if you have crabgrass, just as a side note, use something like a knife or like a fork, so you're not like cutting them into little bits, so you're actually getting you're pulling it up and grabbing each bit and actually pulling them out and removing them. Yeah, that's a good point on that. I've got a lot of crabgrass issues sometimes.
Oh, so there's a question about abolishing mint that has taken over.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the first thing I would say is never plant mint in your garden. Put it in a pot, always in a pot. But Karen, do you have any tips on how to get rid of it if you did put it in your garden?
Yeah, I would use like kind of like with quackgrass, you want to use something that'll catch those rhizomes along the way, or all of those roots, something like that looks like a fork structure, like some of those hand tools, they look kind of like a fork. That's what you'll want to do, because that'll grab all of those, and a lot of them. It's hard to catch them all, but you'll then you won't be breaking them into a lot of bits. You'll actually be collecting them, and then you can remove them. But good luck with your mint. I think that's the best I can offer. Do you have a better option, Carol, or Sarah? Yeah.
I've never grown it in my garden because I've been told not to do that. So I've never had to deal with it. But yeah, somebody did say that they'll come dig some up because they like to have it in their yard. So I guess that's, you can share it with your friends, let them come and dig for you.
Yeah, ours is also mostly contained in like a raised herb garden. And so, yeah, we always manage it. It tries to invade as well. So,
right. Yeah.
We'll
find a way to contain it. just like
Right.
you would maybe raspberries. You always want to wait to contain certain things that will get out of control.
Yeah, it's a fun issue to have sometimes, but yeah, it's still an
Right.
issue. Yeah, raised garden, pots, something like that where they're not in with the rest. I think that's the answer
And
to it.
really, with any herb, it's so nice to put them in pots and put them right close to your kitchen. So you can just step outside and clip what you need every single day. That's the best way that you'll use your herbs. If you need to grow a large quantity, say you want to make pesto, then you might want to put a few basil plants in your garden, but always have herbs in your pots. And a lot of them will winter over. If you have good light in your house, then you can just bring those pots in the house and you'll have fresh herbs for all or at least most of the winter.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a really good point. And then when you do transfer them inside in the fall, make sure, like in the spring, you harden things off, you give it a few days to transition into the super light in the spring. In the fall, you want to transition to a darker environment. So maybe stick it under a tree for for a bit before you bring it in. Also, make sure you're watching for pests as well, because out in
Yes.
nature in the garden, there's natural pest control, which is just a beautiful thing. But then in your house, you don't necessarily have that luxury. So yeah,
Right. Yeah, there's another question about the mixture ratio that was on the slide with the microgel mixture.
Yeah, so it's 1 teaspoon. What I do, I guess, for my own, I do a teaspoon of the hydrogel crystals, like a heaping. We have a 2-gallon pail, so I do let me just do for 1 gallon, 1 level teaspoon per gallon of this hydrogel crystal, and 1 level teaspoon of the mycorrhizal fungus powder. I don't know if you can see it very well, but yeah, 1 teaspoon of the gel crystals, hydrogel, one level teaspoon of the fungus mycorrhizal fungi. That'll do it to 1 gallon of water.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful day, and I have a feeling people want to get out and get started. So it's a little after 11, so I think we're going to wrap up now. And I want to thank you again, Karen, for sharing your experience with all of us. And we invite all of you to send photos of your seedlings and your summer gardens that you started indoors this year. You can send them to us at the email address on the bottom of our website, or you can put them on your Facebook page and tag Mississippi Valley Conservancy so we can see them and share them. We also invite you to sign up for our free bi-monthly e-news, which is also a sign up at the bottom of the page on our website, or follow us on Facebook to stay informed of more presentations and events like this, as well as volunteer opportunities. There's always a lot going on at the Conservancy, and we would love to have your participation. So we thank you for joining us today and wish you a fabulous year of gardening. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Bye.